across our entire community. I want to talk a little bit today about why this is a revolution, why we are starting something here that has gone fundamentally from a vision and lots of different ideas to the realm of the possible, and truly started execution on those ideas and moving from realm of the possible to actualizing the possible. That's what OpenPOWER is doing, and we fundamentally believe that we have started a transformation of the industry, and this is a revolution for us. This experimental idea started on a whiteboard. It started on a whiteboard somewhere in Austin, somewhere in San Jose, somewhere in Mountain View. It started as a collection of ideas across a group of people and has fundamentally changed where we're going as strategies for our companies, for our organizations. We are changing the game. We have gone from that whiteboard to this revolution that we're on the cusp of today. So you can see the progress that John illustrated. We've gone from that vision through the execution. That was our table last year, into adoption. We're seeing a tremendous amount of adoption in some of the early adopters space. We're starting to see that move into the next wave, and we'll talk a little bit about that today. But we've been through revolutions before, as a world, as a country, as an organization. We're now in one of the most tumultuous periods of human history. We're seeing political upheavals, economic upheavals. There are things that we can learn from past revolutions, lessons we can take as we transform in our own industry. The daily disruptions that we're seeing in the IT realm are profound. HP has split. Dell has acquired EMC. Intel recently acquired Altera. I think I've got like 1, 2, 3 mics now. You're going to hear me. Do I need to use this too? All right. Can you hear me back there? Okay, I think we're good. Otherwise, I have too many things in my hands. Dell acquired EMC, Intel acquired Altera. Amazon was once an online bookstore, is now a formidable player in the cloud arena. Businesses are transforming. Businesses independently are transforming. New business models are coming to fruition. And this is an important set of events that are transforming our industry. We can learn from the past. In the late 19th and early 20th centuries, there's the rise of modern corporations that displaced agriculture and craft workers. We had to learn to live with new business models. We saw social revolutions in civil rights and human rights. We've started transforming time and again within our world to continue to tackle the challenges in front of us. Information technology underpins all of this. As John Kelly, an IBM Senior VP, wrote in his new book, in 1989, cell phones could do nothing more than static-filled voice calls. Nobody bought anything online. This was 1989. This doesn't feel that long ago. By 2013, there were 6 billion cell phones. More than 2 billion of them had broadband capability. And we started to see the rise in data. We started to see the growth in data, the growth in capabilities that you can realize from your cell phone. We're now knocking on the door of the cognitive era, and we're going to get into that a little bit more. The world has been redesigned by data, remade in the cloud, and rewritten in code, and we're doing that together. There's no one company that is driving that agenda. We're doing that collectively and collaboratively. OpenPOWER is an essential part of that future. We're seeing our early days of our vision and strategy starting to transform industries. That next chapter is here. We're moving from idea for the last year on experimentation and new business models. We're moving from that into adoption. There's some key areas that we're seeing adoption in. First, the early adopters in hyperscale and cloud service providers are starting to transform large-scale out enterprise. We're seeing this in telecommunications, as John pointed out. We're seeing this in retail. We're seeing this across areas in financial services. Many of the systems and organizations that we interact with every day. In high-performance computing, we're moving into more specific areas like personalized medicine, genomics, oil and gas. We're seeing instrumented science come to fruition alongside things like Internet of Things. The intersection of these things for high-performance computing is bringing high-performance computing to everyone. We're seeing analytics to be a cornerstone of many business models. We're also seeing geographic growth. Our foundation was laid in North America and in China. You've seen our growth there over the last couple of years. We're now seeing a continued growth in Europe, in particular around security and data provenance. There are country borders and, in some cases, parking lot borders to where your data must reside. But those borders can't be ignorant of the global and other economic and political conditions that that data resides in. We can't do this with one single agenda. OpenPOWER is an essential part of this future, and we're being driven by industry forces. We've been talking about Moore's Law and how it's stalled out and how it's coming to an end for some time now. In fact, even Intel's Executive Vice President and General Manager, William Holt, told us not only is Moore's Law coming to an end in practical terms, but chip speeds can be expected to stall and likely roll back in performance. That doesn't bode well for our IT budgets that continue to count on the advances in CPU technology. So we've got to pack more innovations around the chip itself. Things like memory, interconnect, acceleration. I kind of think that every system's going to have acceleration going forward. So we'll continue to need open and innovative approaches to tackle those challenges. What about data? Data makes a lot of people nervous. You know, you look at a chart like this and you're thinking, wow, 44 zettabytes. That's 21 zeros, and we're looking at 44 of those by 2020. What can you do with all that unstructured and structured data? What about the pools of dark data that you're not realizing any value from today? How can you continue to sort of reap the benefit of the data that's coming in, and how are you going to manage that? Where are you going to store that? How are your workloads evolving to meet this challenge? It's a challenge, it's also an opportunity. And it's an important one for our industry and for OpenPOWER. So as we look at this next chapter of adoption, and we look at the need for an alternative, it's an important time for us to think about multiple architectures. Our friends at Intersect 360 Research have reported that 88% of HPC users expect to be on multiple architectures. Okay, that's an HPC. That's one part of the industry. I bet there are a lot more folks in cloud and other parts of the business and enterprise that are also looking at multiple architectures. That bodes well for an open and composable approach to your data center. So we're on the cusp of the next chapters for OpenPOWER. We are on the cusp of a revolution for our industry. And we firmly believe that we are in the right place at the right time with the right technology to tackle those challenges. And that challenge is not one that can be solved by a single CPU proprietary strategy. It's one that requires an open and collaborative approach. It's one that requires us to work together to realize the greater benefit. It's one that requires us to be open, to have open building blocks and the glue between them. And it's one that requires us to have fully integrated hardware and software solutions to enable us to tackle those challenges. And this is a benefit for everyone. You know, when you think about it, and John reflected on this a bit, this isn't, you know, we're off in IT, provider land inventing something really cool and then, putting a sticker on it, putting it on the shelf and selling it out to our end users. We're collaborating directly between end users and providers. We're feeding in all of this, all of the requirements, all of the strategic shifts in those particular industries, and that's shaping the strategy for IT. We've got 59 products out here that didn't exist a year ago. These did not come to fruition in isolation. We're no longer that collection of islands. We've got to work together to solve these challenges. So let me talk about what these three things are, because I think they're pretty important. On the collaboration front, we've started to think a little bit more about the sharing economy. This isn't a new form for open source software community, they've been sharing and collaborating for years. But we're starting to see things like the sharing economy transform other industries. Uber, as John's example pointed out, gives you a new way to hail a cab, to get a ride from point A to point B. Airbnb gives you additional options for your personal travel. I mean, maybe you're using it for business travel too. I'm not allowed to. But if you're using Airbnb, maybe you want a houseboat, maybe you want somebody's apartment. You want a more personalized experience. Those sharing economy models are starting to transform what we're doing in IT as well. And in particular on the infrastructure approach. We're sharing code, we're sharing ideas, and we're sharing skills. That collaboration across all stakeholders is what's moving this community forward. We're not here to base this on a transaction. This is not a one-time, one-shot, this is going to solve my issue for the next 5 years. No, we're developing lasting relationships for long-term durable strategies that will continue to compel and propel us on an open strategy. Next piece is that those systems need to be composable. You need to have a broad menu of options in order to pick from. Those common building blocks need to be able to glue together. You need to mix and match. There's a lot of mixing and matching right here on the stage. That open and composable systems need to have flexibility for multiple architectures. For us, we're focusing on power, but you've got to be able to port workloads easily and seamlessly. We've done a lot of things in our Linux on Power community to make that possible. Porting is one piece of that. And we've got more than 2,300 ISVs developing for Linux on Power today. And it's an important note for us to be able to not only port and achieve parity, but then to fine-tune and adjust those dials to get magnitude improvements. It's no longer acceptable for the rate and pace of data change, for the rate and pace of those workload changes, to only get 2 or 3 points of percentage gain. You've got to get 2 or 3 times, 10 times, magnitude improvements in order to change the game. Take genomics, for example. When you are able to accelerate the genome sequencing, that's the first step. You're lowering the price point, you're lowering the barrier of entry for a lot of firms to be able to take advantage of that new paradigm. Start to layer in medical journals or other research that can help to personalize medicine. That changes an industry, and that's something that we can do by having composable systems, composable answers, and a strategic advantage is realized through that. And then finally, we've got to be able to build those hardware and software solutions together. I've talked a little bit about the genomics example. In financial services, you've got to be able to layer in additional variables of what's going on in political and other economic factors in addition to speed to trade. In oil and gas, for example, it's important not only to take the profound science of HPC for oil and gas exploration, but let's layer in political and economic conditions as well. In retail, the top 10 retail providers in the U.S. have 100,000 outlets. But they're not just focused on their store strategy. They've got multiple channel approaches. Start to layer in weather. Start to layer in local events. I think there was a Super Bowl out here recently. How did that influence the retail paradigm for some of those outlets? Having a tightly integrated hardware and software strategy that is composable and can change and evolve as your business changes and evolves can create new business models. It's not just price performance advantage to realize your IT budget today, but it's also a going forward strategy to continue to evolve and to transform your industry. So we've got a lot of momentum underway. And I will assert that we cannot do this alone. This is not just about the OpenPOWER community. We are very excited about the ties that we're creating and building between OpenPOWER and Open Compute. Open Compute project has been part of our has been part of our advisory group for OpenPOWER for the last year. We announced that last year. And we're continuing to build a tighter relationship there. In fact, we've got some talks this morning that you're really going to want to stick around for to learn more about what we're doing with Rackspace and beyond as we continue to forge tight relationships with that community. We also have a strong relationship with the Linux Foundation. with the HPC Advisory Council, and with the China Power Technology Alliance. No one community is driving this agenda. As John asserted, it kind of seems like there's a new foundation popping up every day. Each of these can work in concert. We all have limits on our resources and energy, and if we can point our communities to collaborate effectively amongst one another, we can solve those challenges and continue to provide base building blocks beyond our own communities. This is a revolution. We've more than doubled our membership. We're now at more than 200 members, and we're continuing to grow. We started building from the hardware layers below. We're growing very rapidly into integrated solutions on the hardware side, as well as moving up into the software layers. This doesn't even encompass the 2,300 ISVs that are developing for Linux on Power. Our extended family, our extended community reach across communities is what's compelling a revolution. This revolution is not OpenPOWER's alone. This is a revolution for our industry. And you see the top row of early adoption. Early adopters are coming to us across the typical fields that I highlighted in HPC, in hyperscale and cloud providers, in domestic IT agendas like China. We're starting to transform and get into the next wave. We're starting to see a lot more large scale-out enterprise workloads. There's not a day that goes by that you won't talk to an IT director that doesn't have a cloud strategy, whether it's private, public, or a hybrid approach. These are essential building blocks to not only a business strategy, but a technical strategy. And infrastructure matters. Infrastructure matters to support those workloads, to be able to drive that performance advantage, to be able to hit those IT budgets, but then to transform, to set the revolution for your part of the industry, for your vertical, for your geography, to be the next Uber, to be the next Airbnb. I guess that's the last chart I have. I thought I had one more. So disruption is here, and I'm very excited to be part of this growing community. I'm very excited about all the announcements that we have here, and I'm exceptionally grateful for everyone who's gotten involved, whether they're involved as an end user, as someone who's feeding us the requirements, as if it's somebody who's involved as a hardware or software provider. We're making incredible progress, and we couldn't do it without you. So if you're not involved already, I invite you to come on in. The water's warm, and we're starting something profound for this industry. And we're excited to work with and create a revolution that's open for the long haul, to create that durable advantage for everyone. Thank you.